Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. The World Bank may have thrown Nigeria a welcome lifeline by approving a $3 billion loan for the expansion of the country's power sector transmission and distribution facilities. This has come at a time when the country is still grappling with challenges to increasing total voltage output of between 3,000 and 5,000 megawatts. It has also emerged that within a 9-year period, there were 209 total collapses of the national grid. How can this expected World Bank funding be utilized for the maximum benefit of Nigerians? For a closer examination of this subject, we are now being joined by Chief Sunday Oduntan, Executive Director of the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors. Welcome to the program and good morning, Chief Sunday Oduntan.
Good morning.
Yes, it's good to have you.
Good morning.
Well, this loan that the Minister of Finance tells us has been approved by the World Bank to expand transmission and distribution in the power sector in Nigeria. Do you think it's a positive development? Do you think it will help in any way, considering that we have not yet addressed many of the challenges we face in the power sector, and now we're talking about expansion? What's your take as someone who is involved in the industry?
Well, thank you very much. It is a very good development. It is a step in the right direction. What is now left is for us to ensure that anytime we get a loan like this, a loan is a loan because you still have to repay the loan back at some point. So whenever we get this sort of lifeline, what is next is for us to ensure that it is used for the purpose for which it is meant. I believe that it is a good step. Nigerian power sector requires a lot of funding, particularly to fill the revenue gap which exists in the system, the huge shortfall which we've been battling with since 2013 November. So this is good for the nation.
Well, I mean, the report that we hear is that this will be a loan to the distribution companies. Do these distribution companies, which you represent, do they have the capacity to absorb more loans, considering the fact that even the Central Bank of Nigeria is promising to throw in an additional 600 billion naira? Now, loans, can you absorb the loans, given the fact that DISCOs have been complaining about so many things, tariffs and whatever?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. The World Bank loan is not for the DISCOs alone. It is actually for the value chain, particularly for the generation companies and the distribution companies. The CBN intervention goes to the generation company through embed. Again, that is for the value chain as well. Talking about whether we can absorb more loan, I just said it a minute ago that the sector has a huge shortfall. You cannot achieve much in this sector unless you bring in massive investments, unless you deploy technology, unless you also look at the issue of pricing, the cost of the product. So this is meant to allow us to do things that we're supposed to do while waiting for a point in time when we will face the reality on the issue of the cost of the product. That's what we call the cost-reflective tariff, which I believe at some point along the line will come, or it will have to come in a way that it will not be what we also call tariff shock for our people. So this is not about whether or not we can. The last CBN loan that we had, up to today, those loans are being deducted as a first-line charge. So that is not the problem. The problem is that if we do massive investments across the value chain, at some point, that will increase generation. That will mean there will be more electricity for our homes. If there are more electricity for our homes, along the line, even the cost of buying electricity will come down. So it is going to be a win-win situation. But lack of investment will only make us to remain where we are. We'll just continue to dance around the same circle. And that is exactly what we think is not proper for the sector at this point in time.
Chief, some people would look at this recent developments that we woke up to this morning of the $3 billion loan, and they'd go as far as questioning whether this is the sustainable solution to the problem. It's often argued an uncountable number of times that the transmission side of power in Nigeria just needs to be privatized in a year like 2019. Generation is privatized, distribution is privatized, but of course transmission is not. Do you think we're not looking at the real problem here, or do you think that's not the real problem and transmission being privatized is not an argument that maybe you stand for? What is your take on this, and also on whether this would be a more sustainable option in terms of our power problems in Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much. The issue of transmission company of Nigeria is a problem that has been there for a very long time. The problem is still there. The TCN is just like the old NEPA, still there. But I can confirm that the current federal government, they've been making a lot of efforts to improve the situation of the transmission company of Nigeria. Even the World Bank has, and some other donor agencies have come to the rescue of the transmission company of Nigeria. But in terms of whether or not it should be privatized, I think we can even be talking about concession. But again, that's a matter for the federal government to deal with. That is something they need to look at. Transmission company of Nigeria is a major problem in the value chain today, and that's something some people don't want us to be saying in public. They would rather you cover it. And if we continue to cover up our problem, you have a wound from the farm, you're a farmer, and you get to the village, you cover it. The longer we cover it for, the more problematic it becomes. It is time for Transmission Company of Nigeria to sit down, sit up, face the job, say the truth, tell the Nigerian public the constraints that we have here and there, which is making it impossible for whatever generation to be willed to us, the distribution companies. But that is not to say that both the generation company and the distribution company are doing well enough. Even we, the distribution company, we are not efficient enough. We need to do more, and we're stepping up our game. So transmission, whether it should be privatized or there should be a kind of concession, that is a matter for the federal government to deal with. But we cannot continue this way, or else we just continue to say the same thing even in 3 years' time.
Well, on October 9, the Electricity Regulatory Commission issued a revocation of licenses notice to all the 8 discos with 60 days deadline, within which the discos were required to come and meet with the NERC and give reasons why their licenses should not be revoked. Now, where are we on that matter? Have the discos started engaging the NERC to explain why the alleged violation of the Electricity Reform Act, as alleged by the NERC, should not lead to the revocation of the licenses of some of the discos?
Thank you very much. We are currently in the process of engaging with NAC, our regulator. We are going to show them reasons why the licenses of the 8 distribution companies should not be revoked. We will give every sensible possible reasons why we should not go down that lane. The notice, the order that was issued, had to do with remittance level in terms of the money that these discos were able to pay to the market. But we've been saying this for a long time, and I'm happy that even the regulator themselves, they are Nigerians, they are also customers of a disco. If we are going to be truthful to ourselves, there's no way you can be buying a product at a higher price, selling below the cost price, and then you are expected to pay 100% back to the market. In this case, again, the way they even structure their thing, that is NAC, they want the MO bill to be paid 100%. That is the one that covers that market operator bill. That's one that pay their own salary, the one that pay their own side. They have not even looked enough at the issue with the generation company who actually generates the electricity. So what we have now is a very unrealistic an unsustainable remittance level. If we go down that lane, no disco will be able to pay salary. And we had a problem, one of the discos last week, when they had to shut down. So we are engaging with them. Tomorrow morning, we shall be at the House of Rep. We've been invited to come and explain our side, how best we can resolve the issues. I believe that the issue will be resolved. But before that order was issued, the chairman of NEC, in a surprise move, sent a letter to all the disco MDs saying that ANED, that I represent, should stop talking in public. We have never had that before. This country has a constitution. We have never had where anybody...
Professor James Momo, chairman of the
Yes,
NERC.
sir.
Yes.
Yes. Our dear chairman of NRC signed a letter personally forbidding discos discussing in public issues that are germane to the sector, saying that if there should be any rank or problem, they should go through the private channel through the... But he's the same chairman who has insisted that ANED, we should not be part of anything. If they have a meeting or anything, we are not allowed in. So there is freedom of speech as long as we do things within the law, and it is unheard of that anybody will sit down in his office and then make a unilateral law. Not even the president of the nation can stop the citizen from talking. As long as what you're saying are legal, things that will bring progress, and things that will help the nation. Again, we will continue to engage with NEC. We believe that they also want the things to be good. It's about Nigeria. It's not about one person or one industry. It's about all of us. And we believe that the issues at stake shall be resolved amicably.
Well, you know, them wanting to stop you from speaking in public just goes to show the exact problem that we have with the power sector here. It's not about Nigeria needing another $3 billion from the World Bank or another loan that we're yet to take. It's about the fact that we cannot get this sector cleaned up. And we continue to come back to the exact same issues, discussing the exact same things, because the sector is not being cleaned up. Why do you think he's trying to silence you with regards to everything that's going on right now with the discos? What kind of a message does that send across to the average citizen that's watching this program right now?
Well, I will give you an example. There was a time when we had a problem here in Abuja. I think it was Kukwaba transmission station. There was no light. People were bothering us in Abuja Disco, AEDC, saying that why is it that they didn't have light? I think as an industry, we have a right, a responsibility, we have a duty, an obligation to inform our customers why there was no light. So we now wanted to let people know about the problem at the transmission end. We also said that the transmission company of Nigeria are also trying their best to fix that fault. But can you believe this? A very high-up person in Nigeria, a top person in the power sector, sent a message to the management of Abuja Disco that they should not let the public know that the problem was from transmission end. So you want the public to think we are the bad guys in the market. I think that is unacceptable. Again, we shall not, as ANED, we shall not be silenced. And I don't think anybody should even think of holding the discos responsible for the actions of a third party. My name is Sunday Oduntan. My CEO is Azu Obiaya. If you have any problem with ANED, those are the two individuals that you hold. Nothing to do with the discos. We do our own thing independently. All we are after is the progress of Nigeria, progress of the power sector, and we shall not, and I repeat, we will not be silenced.
Well, but it's not just the chairman of the NERC that has been complaining about the discos. Even the bulk trader, the MBET, has also been complaining that discos engage in activities that pose a threat to the sustainability of the value chain. And now the CBN and the NERC are coming up with a presidential initiative to address the issue of defaults on monthly remittances by discos. And the CBN is saying that before it will release that 600 billion naira, there will be an automation of the payment system. I would like you to react to that when we come back from the break. We'll take a short break now. You're still watching The Morning Show here on the Arise News channel. And still with us in our Abuja studio is Chief Sunday Oduntan, Executive Director of the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors. Before we went on that break, I was drawing your attention to the fact that even the CBN has complained about DISCOs defaulting on monthly remittances. And part of the move is to make sure that there will be cashless billing and that there will be complete automation and there will be no cash collection, before the CBN will make available the proposed 600 billion naira loan. What's your reaction to this?
Well, first of all, a point of correction. Let me say here that the CBN has never complained about the DISCOs. And I repeat, the CBN has never complained about the DISCOs.
Are you aware of the presidential initiative? Are you aware of the presidential initiative to introduce automation?
Yes.
And the objective is to check DISCOs from defaulting. The CBN is part of that.
Well, we support the idea of automation. We support the idea of that initiative by the federal government, and particularly by the CBN. And that, again, we do not think it is wrong. And let me repeat that the DISCOs are owned 60% privately by the private investors, 40% owned by the federal government. When people shout DISCO, 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 people need to understand that on the board of DISCOs, we have a director representing the federal government. The reason why we have that is also to ensure good corporate governance. So it is very important for people to understand that if I'm selling a product, if a product I'm buying it for 80 naira, and I'm asked to sell it by law, I'm asked to sell at 31 naira, and all I could collect is 19 naira, I cannot remit 80 naira back to the seller. We have to look at the reason why I should be buying at 80 and selling at 31 naira. We also have to look at the issue of why we have MDAs, ministry, department, and agencies, who are owing a huge debt, and they are not paying their debt. And that part of the debt, when I say out of 31 naira, I'm able to collect only 19 or 20. Yeah, they want me to remit 80. So we cannot look at the books. We cannot look at how to make it better. This is not about blaming, naming, claiming, or blaming. This is not about blame game. This is about us being realistic. This is about us looking at the figures. This is about us looking at why is it that the DISCOs are not able to remit 100% back to the market. And that is why we have regulators. And for God's sake, we have BPE, we have NEC. These are agencies of the federal government. These are things that people can see. Even now, before you talk about that automation, I can tell you that collection, every revenue that comes to the DISCO goes through accounts that are known by the central bank. So nobody can do anything without somebody within the regulatory agencies knowing about it. Again, I think it is just sad that because DISCOs are the one below the value chain, will be made the bad guys in the market. And that is very, very unfair, and that is just not good for Nigeria.
So do you think it's a case then of the regulators not actually doing their jobs at all? Would you say that that's a fair argument to put across? I'll give you a school of thought, Chief. Let's say, for example, GENCOs could sell directly to DISCOs without any sort of 20 megawatt or 80 megawatt cap, and all there was a regulation process. Wouldn't we then have less GENCOs also being owed? And that would actually mean we'll have a more sustainable level of electricity or power going out to the people. Is it then safe to say that in all of this, the regulators are not fulfilling their roles?
We have had a very history, we have had history of regulatory inconsistencies. We have had history where regulators engage in series of somersaults. And these are documented. These are issues that everybody can check. But going back to the issue of GENCO sending power to DISCO, power from GENCO to DISCO has to pass through transmission. We have a national grid. If the grid is weak, if the grid is radial in nature, there's no way you can get that quantum of energy down to the DISCOs. That is not to say, I have said it earlier, that is not to say that DISCOs are 100% blameless. I'm saying all of us need to do more. We need to do better things. And in that case, again, the regulator too needs to be consistent. And their regulation and the way they regulate the market should be such that it will be in the interest of the nation. It shouldn't be about waking up on the wrong side of the bed one morning and issuing a letter that amounts to a sort of grandstanding, something that will not help the nation. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying.
Well, you referred earlier on to debt recovery from MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies of government. And I recall that at a point, the NERC said it was supporting the DISCOs to be able to embark on debt recovery. And now you are saying that the MDAs have refused to pay. Now, what other steps did the DISCOs take or should have taken or intend to take to get these government departments to pay their electricity bills?
Thank you. The MBAs, the ministry department and agencies are owing the DISCOs. The money being owed is well in excess of 100 billion naira. Now, collecting that money, and I'll give the example of the military, Ikeja Cantonment, Abeokuta Garrison Command, Kaduna military installations. These guys will just not let us collect, and you cannot disconnect them. So when people in those regulatory agencies turn around and say, go and collect your money, I think it has come to a point whereby maybe next you give us one of their own top staff to follow us to one of those cantonments to see whether it is easy to collect from them or not. Because the truth is that we are a nation, we are a very funny nation. Whether you talk about the military or other agencies, they have people who are their bosses somewhere in Abuja in their offices. For the military, we have the Federal Ministry of Defense. What they told us years back was that, oh, don't worry, we'll take out the MDA debt from the tariff, the structure, so the collection losses, and that we'll make sure that we pay. They promised to pay, they have never paid. When government don't even pay their own debt, how do you expect Yamulika on the road to pay for electricity consumed? That's what we are saying. Let government start by showing example. MDAs should do things by paying their debt. And go and check the budget. In most of them, in most of these agencies' budgets, money is allocated for utilities, including power. But they don't pay. They are not paying. The police, the prison, the military, some ministries, some agencies, these guys are just not paying their electricity bill. Some are paying, I must admit, some, a few are paying, but we're talking of something in excess. By the time we run to about 200 billion, you will see that we're being shortchanged. And people are saying, pay to the market. From how will I pay? You cannot tie my leg and expect me to run. And you cannot clap with one hand. That's what is going on now.
It seems as though, from what you've said, the DISCOs seem rather disempowered in this situation. And the idea that you're posing seems as though your hands are very, very, very tied. So with this $3 billion loan coming into Nigeria's power sector, what kind of changes would you like to see taking place for the DISCOs?
Well, what I would like to see, every time we talk about DISCOs, I would also always like to appeal to you and to our listeners to be talking about the value chain. You cannot improve the DISCOs alone if you do not improve transmission and generation. If you don't pay the gas suppliers who are supposed to supply gas to the GENCOs cannot produce. If they don't produce, there's nothing to be wheeled or transported or transmitted. If they don't wheel, transport, or transmit, there's nothing to distribute. So the value chain needs to be made whole. The answer to that, what we need to do is alignment, technical and commercial alignment. This is what we've been saying all along. If you are going to generate 10,000 megawatts, you must be able to transmit 10,000 megawatts. You must be able to distribute 10,000 megawatts. We need to align the value chain. The idea of so-called intervention from CBN to MBET to pay the GENCOs 701 billion They are temporary things. You pay them today, they'll come back in 5 months' time when the money is exhausted. Why not go either up to the gas end and crash the cost of gas by subsidizing gas? That's an option, because that means the cost of gas will be cheaper to the gencos. Then it will trickle down to the discos. Or you come down to the discos at that level to ensure that the books are made whole. That means everything going up will be smooth and good for the country. What we need, as I repeat, is technical and commercial alignment of the Nigerian power sector.
Well, we don't have much time. We have just about a minute to go. I don't know whether you can answer a question in less than 1 minute. On Saturday, the GENCO said, they lost over 1,000 megawatts due to the unavailability of gas and due to problems with transmission and distribution infrastructure. What is the issue with gas? What is the issue with transmission and distribution infrastructure? Quickly, because we've got to go shortly.
There's a company in this country, the gas suppliers are suffering because they need their money to be paid. There's a particular one of them who are dedicating their gas 100% for the Nigerian market. These guys need to be paid. These guys need to be taken care of. And that can only happen if you make the value chain whole. The transmission grid is very weak. We've been saying this all along. The federal government needs to know that we need to fix transmission. If you don't fix transmission, you cannot distribute anything. You cannot expand and do anything. So the problem with the gas suppliers is that they are not part of the power sector. They need their money to be paid before they supply out with gas. And unfortunately for Nigeria, majority of our power plants, about 25 out of 28, depend on gas. Until we begin to look at other ways of generating electricity, we should take care of the gas end of the value chain.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Sunday Oduntan.
Thank you, Chief.
We've enjoyed this conversation very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.